What's everybody, welcome back to the Grand Torino. Delighted you could join me again. Having just come back from a great experience over at Pontida 2019 and having met the great Matteo Salvini, I am delighted to be back amongst my people here in Ireland. Please, before I get started, as I always do, don't forget press the like button, press the subscription button and the blue bell, and you'll be reminded of future broadcasts here on the Grand Torino. Now, before I introduce my next guest, a couple of points I want to bring up. Also, again, I want to reiterate my support for the people of Oughterard, campaigning outside the government's new direct provision centre and blocking the building contractors from entering the premises and refurbishing the hotel so that the refugees can be set in place. With that in mind, I want to draw your attention to three of the main players. And I was, first of all, today was a tweet by Tony Murray that I follow on Twitter, and a great tweet put out, and I want to draw attention to these three players, with Simon Coveney being touted now as more favourable than Leo Varadkar over the escalating beef crisis and what's going on in our meat processing processes, and with the nepotism that's endemic in our government. I was drawn to this tweet here by Tony Murray. As I said, I learn something new every day, Tony says. Some blue-shirt Coveney married into the Larry Goodman family dynasty. Now that makes more sense of corruption and cronyism, and has the brother in RTE to spin the Fine Gael rhetoric. Holy God, it's endless corruption in good old Ireland. Another player that we might slip attention is our own Alan Kelly. You remember back in 2015, and I put this on the screen, as I will do with all the other information that we present here to you today. All the links will be referenced in the description box. So anything that's mentioned, please make your way to the description box and you can do your further investigations there. With that in mind, I want to read to you the letter that was circulated out by the directors of the planning services in cities and councils throughout the different county boards back in 2015. This is why the government doesn't need your permission or to inform the people as they would normally have to do per planning permission, because what happened in 2015 by the then Minister Alan Kelly, this letter was circulated to the councils, the various different councils, and it as follows, and I'll put it up on the screen here so you can read along with me. Dated the 18th of September 2015 to the directors of the planning services, city and council councils. Planning and Development Amendment number 4, Regulation 2015 SI number 5A2 of 2015. Changes to the extended developmental provisions. And it starts, I am directed by Mr. Alan Kelly TD, Minister of the Environment, Community and Local Government, to attach to your information a copy of the Planning Development Amendment number 4, Regulations 2015, number 5A2 2015. The regulations, which were signed by the Minister on the 17th of December and came into operation on that day, amend the exempted development provisions of the Planning and Development Regulations 2001 to 2015. The primary purpose of the regulations is to insert 4 new classes of exempted development into Class 14 of Schedule 2, Part 1 of the principal regulations, which have the effect that the changes of use specified in the new classes below are exempt from requirement to obtain planning permission. Now I'll go through the list very quickly, but this is the subversion of notifying the people. This is why we are not getting any notifications, why the councillors are saying that they are not getting notifications from the Department of Immigration and Integration. But that's clearly been proven false, as was the case in Wexford when it was found that they were given a week's notice in advance. But surely a week for the community to get together in their town halls, as did happen in Lisdoonvarna. And Lisdoonvarna voted 93% against having the direct provision centre. A new 100 people inserted into a population of 300, nearly a third of the population increase overnight. The people voted overwhelmingly against that, but because of this planning application that the Minister Alan Kelly signed, these 4 unspecified new classes were inserted. Class 14G, change of use of permission from a hotel to a hostel, other than a hostel where care is provided. Class 14H, and this is the one, change of use of various forms of premises providing residential or overnight accommodation for protected persons, i.e. refugees and asylum seekers defined in accordance with relevant legislation for which the Minister for Justice and Law Reform is responsible. This new class of exempted development will particularly assist in the implementation of the government's Irish Refugee Protection Programme as part of the Irish contribution to the EU relocation programme of migrants. This is premeditated, this was pre-set in stone. They knew exactly that should you kick off like what happened in Lisdoonvarna, where you overwhelmingly voted against it, 93%, they no longer wanted to draw the attention and did not need to or seek your permission to install these direct provision centres in vacant hotels, which many greedy business operators have taken up migrants in all categories illegally. Which brings me on to a little drive and a little anecdote before I just break off and introduce my guest. Having driven around the area, I'm not too far away from a meat production plant. Again, this ties back in with the beef industry shenanigans that is going on. And speaking with the retailer, I happened to mention about the ongoing beef situation with the farmers. And I mentioned to him a statistic that I heard, that for every €10 that is spent on beef by the customers here in Ireland, €5.20, I believe. What did I say? Yeah, €5.20 goes to the wholesaler, those that are selling the product from the farmer, for 3 days' work. The processors, we talk Larry Goodman et al., who was galloping and devouring regional farms throughout Ireland and increasing the monopoly that he has gained. Do you know that we pay he gets $6.5 million off the government for rent of one of the official state businesses' premises? That's a little aside. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Breaking into it, just to remind you again, to get further investigations, and I want to direct you towards two YouTube channels, which I'll link in the description below. One is from the great Garrod Murphy. Garrod's investigation is a complete breakdown, about 2 hours long. I thoroughly recommend it. If you do get some spare time at any time, give it a read through. But also, Parse the Noise did a 20-minute breakdown of how the asylum and open borders migration, it will impact and is impacting Ireland currently, with the reopening now of the Italian ports with Matteo Salvini and the League being out of power. But we look forward to the resurrection of Matteo Salvini into the echelons of power, and I believe that will happen, having seen the great excitement and coming together of the Irish, my apologies, the Italian patriots. So with that, don't forget, Alan Kelly changed that law in 2015 so that any objections couldn't be raised. I remember back in an RTE programme, David Stanton was actually questioned by David McCulloch on an RTE programme, would the local community have to be notified, yes or no? And the Minister answered in this clip here, I'll show you.
Get into that in a minute, Minister, but the people of Balladreen, as you said, appear to be very welcoming. What happens the next time if you try to open a centre in a different town and the people of the town say no?
I would hope that people would say yes, and
you might hope that. But what do you do if they say no?
Well, we had an all-party Dáil agreement on bringing people in from Calais, and there was a lot of pressure brought to bear on politicians from all parties to look after the children in Calais, and we're doing that as well. And so the people in Ireland, in the main, want us to help the refugees and the people who are suffering terribly across the world. There are 65 million people displaced at the moment. We are talking about bringing in a maximum of 4,000
yes, Minister,
in the next number of years.
But with respect, Minister, the question I asked you was, do towns have a right to say no?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I don't think so.
He also remained very quiet when I was in Waterford and asked him, was he aware of any ISIS members in any of the direct provision centres. I was quickly ushered out of the place, but no response from the Minister at that time. So what this means in the asylum centres is that the asylum claims, should they be rejected, which they often are, these processes can take up to 18 months per decision. That's 18 months in direct provision. If these people are claiming that they're there for 4 or 5 years, that is in essence because they are repeating their claims. And that is being facilitated by the EU, UN, human rights. Because our constitution is superseded now by the European constitution under the direction of the UN per human rights, that they have to be given unquantified amounts of appeal the decisions. And because we don't deport these people, this 85% of claimants who are by government statistics are rejected, are still in the country, and I would imagine are slowly morphed into the welfare state system through some sort of quagmire, even though they failed deportation and they're not allowed to be deported because of the EU in conjunction with the UN human rights movement. Now that's what I'm saying we need to focus the conversation on, because also now the bringing in the family members. If you go to Parse the Noise, he also shows that up to 20 relatives in some areas have been brought over to join the refugees that have been accepted into the process, and now on some other cases some 70 members. Again, harking back to demographics. Now, I don't want to wail on too much, and I don't want to take up of my next guest, so I'm going to leave that there. A few short notes. I think I got through it there enough, just for things to be aware of in Oughterard, that the government already knew that they did not have to communicate with you or notify you that they were putting in direct provision centres in your communities because of Alan Kelly's change in the planning application when he was Minister for Agriculture. I want you then to do your investigations into his brother and see where his brother leads you off, back to the Clintons, no doubt. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you, my guest. We've had her on the show before, the ex-councillor, and running again, I do believe, Councillor Mellisa O'Neill. Mellisa, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thank you very much.
Now, the purpose of this second part, after my investigations into Alan Kelly there, you've come across new information that's being shared throughout the world, and you wanted to get this information shared out, and I'm happy to facilitate. So with that, I'm going to let you tell us what's this information you want to get out there.
Thanks very much, Ronan. Basically, this week the phone has been hopping. As a mother of a child with disabilities and working with parents of children with disabilities for many years all around Ireland, basically there's an amount of anxiety and fear put out there, especially in the last 3 weeks. Our Mr. Harris, or Simple Simon, as some of us like to call him nowadays, due to the information that's coming into our laps daily. And for those that are vaccine risk aware, we don't use anti-vax because we're not anti-vax people. We are vaccine risk aware, and there is an awful upset, anxiety and fear in Ireland at the moment of the news that has come out within the last 3 weeks. First of all, Ronan, basically it was the news that we are aware, those of us that are aware, that there is a vaccine injury committee in the Oireachtas, formed since 2009.
Right.
Yet no child that has been vaccine injured has ever been paid out any
Really?
monies to. And 3 weeks ago, it's made very public that there is now a vaccine compensation, capped, might I add, funding money there for children that are going to be damaged. So of course.
So they've already anticipated that some people will be injured throughout the rollout of this vaccination.
The rollout of the vaccination, and this time of the year is a serious rollout, as we're all aware.
Tell us what they've got planned coming down the line.
And basically where we're at the moment is, if I can just go back to the last 3 weeks of the information that we are getting from the media, the mainstream media. So of course any child out there, or parent of child that feel they may have been damaged, or tests to be done, there was nearly a relief, I suppose, that this compensation might be there. They are admitting at last that children can and may be damaged from vaccine injury, and this was for a lot of people out there a relief. This followed by Mr. Harris coming out, misinformation of vaccines. We're talking to Google, we're talking to Facebook, shutting down all those parental support groups,
right,
that support each other on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that we agree with misinformation being put out there, far from it. I don't know anyone that has put out misinformation to date, personally, and I haven't seen any Facebook pages that have. Any of the information that's been put out there has been very much well researched.
And have you noticed any online sources coming and attacking you and questioning you and attacking you for your positions, or this information being shared, the usual suspects?
Oh, the usual suspect, the Liberals, and we don't have to even mention them, they don't deserve mentioning at this stage. Basic ignorance, of proper researched information that is going out there. So then we hear all of a sudden this week, and this week I suppose more than the 3 weeks, and it was 1 week after another that this was just being flung out at us. And it was basically creches, that children would not be allowed into creches unless they were fully vaccinated. Now I'm sitting here as a parent, first and foremost, as a child that cannot receive a vaccine. So the amount of parents out there that know their children have, be it a genetic disorder, be it a blood disorder, be it a heart disorder, which Merck and all the pharmaceutical companies state on their own inserts should not be vaccinated. The fear that these people have of, not getting a creche place because they can't, because of medical issues, cannot vaccinate. Mr. Harris has not clearly come out and said that medical exemptions are going to be protected. We have seen last week medical exemptions being taken away from the people of California. And anyone out there that wants to look this up, everything that we are saying today, all links that are not misinformation, are all fully researched, proper information, and we'll leave all the links under the description box after this if anyone has any issues on what we are saying here. So just to look at California, they have completely taken away their medical exemptions, their religion exemptions. So we fear that we are now at the start of that here. So a lot of people have messaged me and have said, what's going on? Are people asleep? He's not a doctor. Where's he getting information? And that's why we're having this conversation today. I have news, and we've done a lot of our research, and it is all coming from, proper, strong, researched areas. So we found out this week, with the upset of the creches and the fears of it going into our schools, our secondary schools, our workplaces, and every corner, that we now know that this is a premeditated, global, coordinated agenda. I'd like to tell the people of Ireland and anybody listening, this is all definitely premeditated, coming from a group that was organised called GHSA. Don't bother Googling it, it won't tell you who they are. So it's the Global Health Security Agenda. This is a global matter. Mr. Harris is under orders from the EU, who have joined up in this global agenda. The government and Leinster House have no say in this. They are just bowing and handing us over to this global agenda without giving us this information. So just to tell you who this global health security agenda are and who are involved, and it's the UN, it's the WHO, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, African Union, and here's a nice one for you people, and Interpol. These are the people that make up this group that have decided that the whole world has to be vaccinated with as many vaccines as possible and as quick as possible. And the repercussions will be fines. Your children not left into the local creche, your children not left into the local school. We have seen this, it's already happened in Australia.
I often say it's just a little trope that's thrown out there. If the vaccinations work, why are you worried that the unvaccinated kids will affect the kids that got vaccinated if the vaccinations work? That's a little aside.
Well, it's not really, because actually all the surveys out there and all the researchers that we now know, and this is actually coming from anyone that wants to look this up, would be the Children's Health Defence, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has given us these figures. 55% to 76% in the outbreaks that have been, investigated were actually vaccinated children.
Wow.
So this, and we're hearing the screaming about the measles here, and they're using this. They're using the word measles as a fear factor. We now know that 41% of the outbreaks of those that had measles were vaccinated for measles.
Wow.
So none of this argument, we are not allowed to have this debate, we are not allowed to have this conversation. We're screamed at, we're shouted at, that we're killing children by asking questions. Now we are very aware that one does not fit all, and basically this GHSA agenda wants one to fit all globally in the whole world. This is definitely, we have right of concern.
Well, I just want to tie that in with what I was saying there as well, is because of the planning laws that the UN and the EU push upon the Irish politicians, which is their get out of jail card. It's not us. We have to do this because we've agreed with Europe that they're bypassing the Irish Constitution and the will of the people. So if the will of the people was, no, we don't want birthright citizenship in Ireland, they are now subverting that. Again, here with the people's right of information to the vaccinations problems that they already have cited in their websites that will damage children. They are prepared for those cases that will be brought up, and of what they percentage related to what they would have to make in payouts compared to what profits they will make. But tell us what you've uncovered that's going on here in Ireland.
Well, we had Mr. Harris come out literally this week and say all vaccines are safe. We are well aware, and those of us that are vaccine risk awareness are aware that there is no vaccine 100% safe. So the fact that he's saying it's safe are making us all feel ridiculously stupid. And just on that note, basically just want to say that there was surveys done that this GHSA came together in 2012 is when they were formed, when they launched. February 2014, was the launch. And in 2012, the EU ordered our government to do a survey on the Irish people. And that survey came back stating that 40% of Irish people would have issues with literacy. So then we had a group called MDS, aka Merck.
More acronyms.
Merck, the VIP vaccine makers, who actually have 5 companies here in Ireland, and are actually tripling. 3 weeks ago got planning permission. We're talking about planning, back to the planning
Back
permission.
to the planning.
Back
Mr.
to the
Kelly.
planning, all join the dots here.
Join the dots, people, exactly what
Yeah.
we're trying to do.
And basically nearly tripling their plant. Merck is MSD anywhere outside of America. So the pharmaceutical company Merck, MSD, got together with this group of literacy and decided, because that 40% of Irish people basically had reading issues, literacy issues, that they would help them. Basically,
Make the
in
decision
my
for
mind,
them.
they would help write
Right.
health policy for the Irish people.
Really?
So now we have Pharma, Merck, writing policy for the Irish government, health policy for the Irish government. This to me is scandalous, that a pharmaceutical company are making decisions on policy, government policy of health in our country. We did not give an American company the right to write our health policies in Ireland. We still, this is a universal Declaration of Human Rights breach. This is our human rights. It's in breach of the Article 3 of the human rights. All of this. And basically it's just gone so out of hand at this stage. And on top of that, we found out again this week that our government, according to the GHSA, are now a donor country, along with 67 other countries, for this new SIM printing of children in Africa. So we are aiding and abetting trials on fingerprinting digital carry on in Africa, from 1 to 5 year old children. We, the Irish people, taxpayers, are now aiding and abetting for this on African children.
Right.
And this SIM printing basically is a security. They call it health security, starting in 2020, starting next year. And I would like to ask Mr. Harris and this government why this has not been, this type of information in our name, because it is not in my name, Ronan, and I don't know anybody that feels that this would be in their name in this country. Why we weren't asked to be a donor country? Why are not we being told this as the Irish people? So basically it's security. So they're calling it an international security. So there we have Interpol involved, with the World Bank, with the EU, with the UN, and with the WHO. But these digital trials, experiments on babies from 1 to 5.
Where can people find this? This will be in the information down below. It's on their website and stuff like that.
All this is on their website, and I can I'll leave all the links with you. All this is information out there. This is actually on their own websites.
Yeah.
We found all this information.
I just wonder what percentage, when you were saying that the rollout, they were made aware, they were calculating the amount of people that they would risk. In the Irish rollout, can you imagine what it'd be like in the African rollout if there are 20 million young girls going to get this HPV vaccine? How that percentage of what they allocate would be affected by this? Will that translate to those poor children in Africa that will be purposely affected? That these companies already know that they're going to cause damage to some people. Surely that alone, people would say, we'd have to cut the risks in that. Surely we'd have to have a look at that situation and go back till more analysis comes in, you know?
Well, I suppose my fear is the whole digital and, you know, we're just going to be tracked. It's a tracking. To me, it's all part of the global one world tracking system.
Yeah.
And like it has it written all over it. You know, if we're going to be 1 to 5 year olds. What we're not being told, we just know we're a donor country. Are we a donor financially? If this works, if they get some result, we're all for evolution. We're not against evolution, but not at the cost of young children's lives. We will not sacrifice our children for digital new age.
It's crazy stuff, and it's, people would say it's kind of, you know, out there, but as I say, it's on their website. The government are tied in. We can see the organisations that are trying to bring it all in. We only ask that you do your investigations, and if you have any concerns, like they've already admitted that it's going to cause some damage to some children, do you want to set that risk and to allow your child to have that vaccination with a percentage possibility that your child could be damaged by this? Surely there needs to be more investigations. Mellisa, I hope you got everything out there. Have you got any more to add?
Just to say, at the moment, you know, the HPV vaccine is being rolled out to boys and girls. And to be very, very clear and not giving out any misinformation, there is absolutely no evidence that the HPV vaccine prevents cancer. There is no evidence out there. And anyone that needs, would you please, I'm asking everyone please to sign up to the Children's Health Defence, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s page, and all the information you need is there. This is all this is actually in the Supreme Courts in New York as we speak. These companies are up on trial, and the fact that Mr. Harris, our health minister, is continuing to carry on this global health security agenda, whose people's involvement are up in Supreme Courts at the moment, I'm asking him to halt any more of this farce until these courts decide, and not to be putting the children's lives at danger in Ireland.
Mellisa, that's a great bit of information. Thanks very much for joining us and sharing that bit of information, and I hope you will take that on board and do your investigations and share this video amongst on your own social media platforms and get Mellissa's information. And I know it's comes from a good friend of ours in the United States who's doing amazing work over there, and obviously with Senator Kennedy also taking it in within the Supreme Courts. I know the United States Supreme Courts are very much in favour to re-investigation all cases and these kind of new information that's being perpetrated. Melissa, I want to thank you for looking out for the children of Ireland. Where from? No, wait, I'm not finished giving you a lad. Take the praise while you can get it. You're running again soon, but you haven't decided who you're running for. Is that correct?
I will be 100% running in the general election, and you know there's a lot of work being done at the moment, and we'll let that news out when needs be. And just on the last note there, and just to let people know, this is not just Ireland. Obviously, there's 67 countries, and if we just look at Australia, look at Italy, look at France, look at Berlin. These people are on the streets already. Their medical exemptions have been taken away. Their religious exemptions have been taken away. Their parental rights and human rights have been taken away. And now it's starting here in Ireland. And this is coming down the road to us. We are all signed up without our knowledge to this agenda that we did not personally consent to. It is out there, it is happening. Please, people, look at Australia, look at Berlin, look at Canberra in Australia. They are already on the streets against mandatory vaccination. Please stand up.
Great stuff, Melissa, well done. I want to say before we round off again, don't forget, not to forget, But to commemorate, if you see these kind of actions happening, you've only got to follow the example of the good people of Oughterard who have decided to take and prevent the building contractors to enter the premises to refurbish the hotels. These simple actions can be repeated again. You can have these kind of street silent protests and show your disdain and your displeasure and indeed your dissent at the government policy that seems to be being rolled out on many different branches throughout government without and not on behalf or the behest of the Irish people. We demand to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, see you again on the next episode of the Gran Torino. Us.